on an epic losing streak, and it is annoying him. And he's getting frustrated, and he's lashing out at the Federalist Society and Leonard Leo and people in his own administration and the Supreme Court. But the reason that he's losing has nothing to do with left-wing activist Marxist judges. It has to do with the fact that his lesson that he learned from the immunity decision is that he could get away with murder, almost. And we've just been lurching from one constitutional crisis to the other since the start of his administration. And the only thing that stands between us and utter chaos and tyranny are the federal judges who are doing God's work, to mix up my concepts here of church and state. They're doing God's work to hold Donald Trump accountable, but he doesn't like it. So we're going to pick up with what it means and the trend lines as the United States Supreme Court starts picking cases for its next term. We're still waiting on about 10 or 15 major decisions out of the United States Supreme Court, including about nationwide injunctions and indirectly. But they did issue a couple of interesting, peculiar rulings in the area of gun rights, which I think have been misinterpreted by most of the mainstream media. We'll try to sort it out here on Legal AF and then look at a new case on voting rights that the Supreme Court decided to take up in its list for the new term starting in October. Sounds like it's a long time away. But between now and October, this Supreme Court, Karen, is going to be very, very busy with emergency applications and rulings and maybe a hearing or two, which would be quite unusual, but I could see it happening before they come back. Let's bring in Karen. Karen?
Sorry, I had to find the mute button.
It's all right.
Hi, Popok. Great to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. I'm still trying to get my eyesight lined up with my camera. I have a new setup here in my office, but we'll get that straight. Looks like I'm not looking at you, but I really am. One of the things before we came on the air, I was kind of taking a look at is, I don't know if you've been following law firms that are being penalized by major corporations because they agreed to settle with Donald Trump. There's at least 14 firms that got together and said, well, we better settle because we don't want to be attacked and rip away all of our profits per partner. And they ran the gamut. I mean, I worked at one of those firms in particular, and they gave Donald Trump over $1 billion of free legal service. Now, I haven't heard much about how that's going. In other words, what cases they're handling for Donald Trump or those in his inner circle. I have heard about people leaving, including Rachel Cohen, who's going to start doing some work for Legal AF very, very soon, associates that had conviction and courage and decided to give up their careers rather than stay in firms like that. But what I have heard is about 14 at least major companies taking business away. And I'm talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of business, like the Microsofts, the Oracles, the McDonald's, taking major business away from those law firms. And it's being led not only by general counsels, and I've worked as an in-house general counsel for a major company and was their deputy head of litigation. I get how that office directs legal services, but by women general counsels. And it's the revenge of the women general counsels and others that support them that I find most fascinating. Did you catch that reporting lately coming out of the Wall Street Journal?
It's so interesting, right? It's so interesting how some people are responding to this. There are some law firms that caved, frankly, there's no other word for it. They caved to Trump's administration going after them. And the reason I say they caved is because all the ones that are fighting back have won, because this is illegal to do what he's trying to do and target these law firms. And so they caved thinking, oh, it's better for business. But it's interesting to see that maybe not. Maybe it's not better for business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one example that was in the Wall Street Journal is Latham and Watkins. That I know people there. I know the head of litigation there. He's a friend of mine. But they have lost the Microsoft book of business.
Because of this?
Yeah, because Microsoft wants a fighter. They have antitrust cases against the government, right, and they don't want to look. This was all presciently predicted by Judge Beryl Howell when she wrote one of the 4 decisions about the firms that you mentioned, right? Perkins Coie, Sussman Godfrey, Jenner and Block, and Wilmer Hale. When she wrote one of them, she said in a footnote, and then I amplified it in a hot take. She said, "Why would you ever?" I'm paraphrasing. "Why would you ever as a client want to hire one of these law firms that's settled, they have an obligation of zealous advocacy. They have an ethical obligation. How do you know that they're defending your interest and prosecuting your interest as opposed to looking over their shoulder about trying to appease Donald Trump? Why would you ever go to a firm like that? And that was a month and a half ago. And now you're getting like Brooke Cuccinella, who is at a restaurant you and I go to all the time. We're in New York, unfortunately, for these rubber circuit meetings at Cipriani's. And she said at Cipriani's, and she represents, and she's the general counsel in-house for Citadel, Ken Griffin's company. And she said out loud, I'm not going to work with any of those firms. I want a fighter. I want a firm that's going to fight. And so there, and Latham said the same thing and immediately directed work away from them. And Sullivan and Cromwell's in big trouble too, because their head, their chairman, if you will, because you and I did reporting on this, that Sullivan and Cromwell suddenly showed up and started representing Donald Trump in the appeal of the 34 felony count conviction out of your old office in Manhattan. We were like, Sullivan and Cromwell? I mean, what is going on there? But there's a guy, Rob Giaffra, who is the head of that firm, but also and he started signing his name to these pleadings. Turns out for the Wall Street Journal reporting that he also brokered the deal with Paul Weiss, to the first one in, to pay $40 million in free legal services, followed by $100 million and $150 million and another $150 million by all the other firms. But he brokered that deal, and it almost tore his law firm apart. And to appease them, speaking of appeasement, he said to them out loud, according to the Wall Street Journal, don't worry, I think that the executive orders against these law firms are unconstitutional and they won't be upheld by courts. So don't worry about it. Well, then why are you representing Donald Trump in an appeal? And why are you brokering a deal to lead Paul Weiss to the slaughter if you don't think ultimately, is that good counsel? If you were representing, shouldn't you say, fight this?
Well, because he got how many, how many $1 billion in free legal services on behalf of Donald Trump. So, I mean, that's why.
Yeah. And now they're, So I just thought that was very, very interesting as we were coming on the air. But let's move to Judge Zinnes. I mean, we are big fans here. You, me, Legal AF in general. I don't know why I'm so far from my microphone. I'm sorry. It's like a new rig, and I'm learning my way. We like Judge Zinnes a lot, not just because she's a Democratic appointed judge in Maryland, because she has an intestinal fortitude. She's got a strong judicial brain. She is, she's expert in her jurisprudence, and we like the way she runs a courtroom. And if you don't believe us, it's the only thing lately that the Supreme Court agreed on, that she was right, 9-0. I mean, I joked on a hot take, you can't get the Supreme Court to agree on their sweet greens order, let alone 9, including MAGA, agreeing that she was right about the Abrego Garcia case in the way she's administrating his habeas corpus rights, his due process rights, his Fifth Amendment rights in her courtroom. And this is the case, as everybody will remember, or I'll remind people new to the show. Donald Trump, listening to Stephen Miller, invokes the Alien Enemies Act to start removing people and deporting people without due process. 250 of them are shackled, put on a plane in the middle of the night, and sent to El Salvador, of all places. And one of them was named Armando Abrego Garcia, but he should not have been on that plane, as admitted by the Justice Department, because he had in his back pocket, almost literally, an order from a federal judge, an immigration judge, that said he could not be removed and sent to El Salvador because he could die. And ICE knew that. This came out in the record. And nevertheless, not on a minute, this wasn't an error. Said, yeah, we don't care what that says. Get on the plane. And it was only because his wife saw him in a video being unloaded from the C-130 or whatever in El Salvador that we even kind of knew about it. He just didn't come home for dinner. He's a married guy with 2 kids, married to an American citizen in Maryland. And no, for those that write sometimes in the chat, he doesn't have MS-13 tattooed on his fingers. That was a deep fake AI. And if you don't believe that, go watch Mountainhead on HBO and Max, and you'll know what I'm talking about. I don't know why I'm plugging something that doesn't pay me to plug it, but okay. It's a show I'm watching. I thought people might be interested. So you've got that, and that event of sending people without due process to El Salvador kind of spawned 2 lawsuits, 2 cases. One presided over originally by Judge Jeb Boasberg in D.C., and one with Zinnes. Boasberg handled everybody not named Abrego Garcia. and issued. He's the one that came up with the first